You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel. Daryl should be joining me shortly, and there he is. Hey, there we go. All right.
Hey.
All right. So, again, sorry about last night. I'm not going to dwell on it because obviously people that watch this in the future will have no idea what we're talking about if I do. But for those of you guys who were counting on us being on last night, it just couldn't be helped. I mean, if we were going to try to do that, it would have been well after midnight. I was already, I'm still getting over being sick. If you guys were watching our Monday show, you know that I was actually not exactly myself. I was a little bit down on the energy. I'm still getting over it, still, coughing. That's why I'm following your advice. Got my throat comfort tea, which actually might be my drink of choice from now on, by the way. This is actually good for if you have to talk for long periods of time.
Which we do.
Which we do sometimes. And I'm sure today will be no exception. Because tonight, we're actually going to be reviewing the final episode of the season in Ahsoka. Right? And now, last night it was funny because right before we went on, Dom and Dragonfly started commenting in. Dom, of course, is not really happy with it. And, I have to say, my initial thoughts, it had some good moments, but overall, it was a lackluster season finale, in my opinion. There are a lot of problems. There are a lot of things that they should have fixed. There's a lot of things they should have done. The action was cool. There was a lot of, like I said, there is a lot to like in this episode. But overall, it felt more like a mid-season finale to me than something that was tying it up, which is something I was afraid was going to happen. I don't know. What'd you think overall?
Yeah, overall, I think it was somewhat lackluster, but I completely agree with you. There are a lot of great points, and there's a lot of great things that happened in this season finale. Some things didn't quite happen, but I'm curious as to see what's going to happen as we progress.
Well, and this is something that we had talked about as well. We said, look, there's a danger that what they're doing here is they're trying to make season 1 more of a setup for season 2, and that season 2 is where a lot of the significant things are going to happen. My issue, and it's a couple of fold, really. One, I think that, unfortunately, as sometimes these shows tend to do, they ask more, or they create more questions than they end up answering. It's kind of like, well, when you should be tying things up, and particularly, even though he didn't really have a lot of screen time in this, particularly with Baylan, I was really disappointed because we know that we lost Ray Stevenson. It was
right. Yeah.
It's kind of like you're sort of hoping that maybe. Now, again, it's not their fault. It's not the writer's fault that the guy died after, they couldn't have known that. In fact, like I had said a couple of shows ago, Ray Stevenson was alive and well at the Star Wars Celebration in April. You never would have known this guy only had weeks left to live. You would never have gotten that vibe. So, again, there's some, it's kind of like, okay, we could just start this thing. Right from the get-go, one of the things that bothered me, the first dumb decision actually happened within the first minutes of this episode. Thrawn's sitting there talking about how, you can't underestimate the Jedi, and I made this mistake before, and, he's going on this whole thing, and then he's like, yeah, send 2 TIE fighters to intercept them. I'm like, 2? You just got through saying you can't underestimate these guys. You just got through saying that you made this mistake in the past. You've already seen what they can do. You have 30 of them. I'm not saying send all 30, but send more than 2. Right out the gate. Stupid.
I wouldn't necessarily say that was stupid though. I
Arrogant?
get what he was. No, I think so. His objective is it wasn't necessarily to destroy them because I think that's what he was saying. I think he was. I'm not underestimating. I think he was trying to say I'm not underestimating their ability to survive and become formidable. I think what he was more or less trying to do is one, keep them at bay, and then two, it was like, okay, I don't want to deplete my resources because it's not like you have a empire where you can go back and just get a gang of more TIE fighters. I mean, what he has is kind of what he has.
Well, but here's the
So
problem with that. I
yeah,
mean, you already see that the few Jedi already dispatched, which this would support your argument, right? Like in the episode before, it's like they just mowed through the ground forces or whatever that had
mhm,
initially gone after them.
right.
And, I'm not talking about recently. I mean, like later on, right? So, I mean, okay, they're trying to slow them down. Send 5. I'm not saying send the whole fleet because they end up doing a
Mhm.
ground assault anyway. I mean, think about it. It was like if all they were trying to do was just hold them at bay or whatever, then yeah, I can understand that. But it was like after that ended up failing, it's like, oh, we'll send a ground assault. So, I mean, you're sending all these people anyway. See what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah, but I mean, I get the whole thing. It's like, okay, look at it from a monetary standpoint, like almost like a business sense. It's like, would you rather lose 2 ships or 5 that
well,
you
I
can't
get it,
readily
right? Because
replace?
it's well, you can't replace the men either. Well, I mean, you
Yes,
can
you
because
can.
we find out they're zombies. The zombie trooper thing, I think, was actually one of the coolest things in this. Um, That I
Mhm.
thought was sort of a nice touch. The fact that this finale came out in October, I think
Yeah.
maybe it adds a little bit, right? Like maybe it hits a
Mhm.
little different than if it came out in say August. But
Sure.
yeah, so I mean I get it, right? They can reanimate more troops. I understand that. And ships, it's not like they're near any shipyards. They have to hold on to
Right.
supplies. But again, it's kind of like, you know, I still think they could have like 4, right? Keep 2 in the air, and I mean, it wouldn't have bothered me actually that much if he hadn't just given this whole dissertation about how he's underestimated the Jedi in the past. They've been doing it the
Well,
whole
yeah,
time.
I don't think he was underestimating them. I think he, like I said, I think it was more of a like he wanted to distract them enough where he's like, okay, we can hurry up. And I think that was his whole plan, and that's why he even told. It's just that they moved faster than what he hoped. It was like, dang. He's like, okay, all right, this didn't slow him down as much as I thought it would, but I don't think he was trying to underestimate them. I think he was just kind of like, all right, I just need them distracted enough where I can complete my thing so we can get the heck out of here.
Well, Dragonfly
Because
agrees with you. He says it felt
Mhm,
like his ego wanted them to be trapped there like he was, not necessarily killed, which that's
right.
obviously the case. Again, stupid. Yes, you do want them killed. I mean, that's the point. They're forever going to thwart you. It's like, why trap them there? This is a whole Bond villain thing. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to imprison you and I'm going to tell you my entire plan and then I'm going to leave you alone. It's just like
Mhm.
like Scotty Evil says, and in Austin Powers, just shoot him. You got a gun, just kill him. That's the point. I mean, I get it. They're trying to extend stuff, but that's been my point the whole time. It's like you guys don't understand. It. And again, I think that they could have framed that. All they would have had to do was either shift that dialogue a little bit, I don't know, later. Like, see, that would have made a little bit more sense later on when he was sending the ground troopers, right? Like when the aerial assault thing or whatever failed. He's like, okay, begin the ground assault, which actually totally reminded me of like the Hoth line. Um,
Mhm.
but if he had actually said at that point, yeah, you know what, I underestimated the Jedi once. Like, personal experience. I'm not going to do that again. Okay, now that would make more sense within that context. I don't know. I can tell you this too. I had to laugh because I ended up watching John Campia's thing last night because I wanted to see. He wasn't really talking about it. He decided that he wasn't going to review. He started out reviewing a few episodes. He didn't hate Ahsoka, but he didn't like it, so he just wasn't going to waste his time reviewing on it because he didn't want to dump on a show that everybody was, enjoying. So,
Hmm.
but a lot of people were asking him to actually review the series as a whole, and I mean, unsurprisingly, his views pretty much line up with mine. But where I had to laugh was he brought up that scene. I was like, no way. Because I honestly thought that I would, that'd be like some obscure little thing that I would latch onto. I didn't really necessarily think anybody else would, but, it was kind of obvious. But I will say this now, flipping over to something good. Because, always got to do a little bad, little good. I did like the Morgan Elsbeth transformation to like full blown Night Sister, though. That I thought
Hmm.
was cool, you know. And I really like the way that they handle the Night Sisters in this. They really do feel the way that they're depicted. Well, we first see them in Rebels, in new canon, and any kind of visual medium, right? Because they were essentially an expanded
Hmm.
universe thing. So we first see them there. I'm like, okay, cool. And then when I heard they were bringing him to Rebels, I'm like, I mean, they were really more like the Dothamir witches, you know, in the novels and stuff like that. And they did the whole like Night Sister thing or whatever, and that was cool. And I like the way they were depicted in Rebels, but I was a little nervous on how they would depict them in live action, only because, and this is something you and I talk about a lot, the budget, right? There's a lot of times where the television budget ends up getting in the way, and I honestly thought that they handled it well. I thought that, um her whole transformation was kind of cool. I mean, even if you look at the title of the show, the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, it's such a play on the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I was just like,
you
oh boy.
yeah, and you understand that. Like you get the feel for why that is when you watch this episode. And so I thought that those things were pretty cool. I thought the lightsaber building scene with Ezra and Huang was nice, and I mean,
Yeah.
any scene that Huang is in is amazing to me. But I thought that was nice. There was some nice exposition on Ahsoka's relationship with Sabine. So I mean, there was a good chunk of what I felt were good scenes in this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of great little gems, like you said, the Huang and Ezra rebuilding a lightsaber, which makes me wonder, like, why he decided to build one when he's all like, "Oh, the Force is my." That's my whole thing. It's like, okay, so why didn't you use? You know what I mean?
Here it comes.
Just
I
see,
was trying to be
that's the
good.
part.
I was being good. Okay, so this is now your time
But
to explode
this
on
is
it.
my moment. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I didn't
This is
realize it
my
was going to be a trigger. I'm so sorry. By the way, I want to welcome all the new subscribers. We got like a gang of new subscribers in the last like 24
yeah,
hours or something. So I don't know if any of
yeah,
them are
welcome,
watching now,
definitely.
but I mean, I know some of the people that are chatting are in there. Um, but before you finish that thought, because I definitely want to hear it, because it sounds like you're about to have a me moment uh, about this. Voyager, Voyager, of course, joins us. Welcome you back. I mean, it's been a minute, I think, since we talked to Voyager. He says Huang was the MVP of the show, and I actually have that in my notes, by the way. So I wholeheartedly agree that he is totally the MVP of the show. Constantly, in I think more cases than not, he ends up saving scenes or episodes. So more power to Huyang. Huyang. What a tongue twister that is. All right, so go ahead. I mean that because you're on a roll and you're not wrong. And so
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of my biggest gripes. Is that, like, I mean, I thought the scene was actually really cool, but I hated the fact that it's like, okay, you just, like you said, just made this whole statement last episode talking about, oh, I don't need it. The Force is my ally. And we had this whole debate about, well, he's this powerful, Okay, then why are you building another lightsaber then?
Well, all right, now I'm gonna be you. Now it's my turn.
Okay.
Now we're gonna flip the script. Now I would agree with that. And
Hmm.
again, I don't 100% disagree with it, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out that in his defense, he just got his butt handed to him in the last episode, pretty much, where he probably was thinking, maybe this not using a lightsaber thing, because even the thing that I thought was funny about the conversation on the ship, on the outside of the ship between Ahsoka and Sabine, that I thought was cool. Again, I really enjoyed that conversation. I thought that was really good dialogue, and it these are the kinds of things that I think were missing in the earlier episodes of the series. But when no, it wasn't Sabine. Ahsoka made some comment about lightsabers, and Sabine was all like, "Yeah, they would be kind of nice though," and you know, in this situation or
Oh
something like
yeah.
that. Because I mean,
Yeah,
look,
they're quite
that's
helpful though. Yeah,
yeah,
basically.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like, all right, she was basically saying, look, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, they would help right now, though. Like in this situation, I think it's kind of a good thing. So for that, I think that's what was happening with Ezra. Because if you think about it, it had been a minute since he was facing any kind of a thing. He'd grown more powerful in the Force. He probably figured, because look, if this was Yoda, Yoda would have been able to take all these people out, no problem, with the Force alone.
Absolutely.
Somebody
Yep.
like Dooku, somebody like Palpatine, same thing. And while admittedly,
Even
Ezra
Mace.
is very powerful, huh?
I say like even Mace Windu or
Mace
Obi-Wan
Windu,
probably could have done.
sure. There's a lot of them. Pretty much anybody that's above Ezra's pay grade. Because again, I mean, Ezra is powerful, no doubt about it. But
Hmm.
essentially, he was trained by a Padawan. He did go through the trials. Yes, he was trained by Maul for a little bit. Look, there's some things that you could point to and say, look, all right, Ezra is legitimately very strong in the Force. But, he's not at the level where he could just start going around and, I'm just going to use the Force only. And I mean,
Hmm.
I will admit this. I did have a little bit of an issue with it when it first appeared. I didn't have as much of an issue when he decided, you know what, I'm going to rebuild the lightsaber because, you know, what happened to him. But when he was first introduced, even though I think when we reviewed the episode, I thought that was actually kind of cool because it was different. But upon further reflection, I don't know, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it just that kind of just threw me, um, but it was cool nonetheless to see it, and then um, it was cool just to see how fast he was actually doing it. When you watch somebody like I guess that would have been Sabine or something like that. It took her for like ever to do it, but somebody like Ezra, he kind of just like, all right, yeah, we got all the pieces here, cool. I could, do this and bam, and it's cool to hear Kanan's name mentioned too by Sabine. That was also um, a good thing. Um, the fact that his new color is blue is interesting because
Yeah.
the one he built. So he originally started off with blue, then he had a green one, which is the one Sabine has. Now he's returned back to blue, so it kind of makes you wonder, what's happened within him because that's what determines your crystal color. Um,
And we all
that
know
allowed him
that's
to go
something
back
that
to blue.
Filoni would definitely be at. Let me get to these two texts or chats really quick. Dragonfly, he's still a latent potential to grow. Yeah, look, I know he does have. Look, Ezra is at a point right now, and let's face it, he was trained by a Padawan essentially. He was. There's still room. He's young. That's the other thing. I mean, relatively speaking. But I wanted to get to Ted Adam Green's thing real quick. He says, "Hey guys, at the Atlanta airport, so can't stay live. That's okay. As long as you go back and watch it, though, because we let's keep that watch time up. Plus, this is a good one. You're not going to want to miss this. Just wanted to drop in and say thanks for the great Ahsoka coverage. Made my viewing experience just that much better. May the Force be with you. Well, that's cool.
Oh man, thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
see, that's the kind of thing that I really enjoy. You know, it's like when people are actually getting stuff like this out of this show, and we're enhancing the viewing experience. And to be honest, you guys are enhancing it for us. I mean,
Yeah.
I've really been looking forward to coming on here, and I mean, the fact that I've been sick all week, you know, I mean, things were a little bit slower, and then of course, you know, last night getting all messed up or whatever. But I mean, I couldn't wait because, you know, we could have just held it off. But I'm like, no, man, I want to get on here and talk about this with you guys while it's still fresh in my mind. You know, I don't really want to go back and read my notes going, I wonder why I put that there, but oh well, it's in there, so I'm just going to say it. You know, I'm not going to do that. That would be bad. Voyager says, I was so mad Ezra didn't take his lightsaber last episode, so I was so relieved that he built a new one. Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing because I thought was going to happen in the last episode was that he was going to maybe start out with that whole, you know, the Force is my ally kind of thing, right? And then later on, he was going to be like, hey, you know what? Let me take my lightsaber after all. But it didn't happen. So yeah, when he built this one, it was cool. And it was nice to see a different spin on the building the lightsaber thing, too. I thought that was kind of cool.
The other thing I loved about his lightsaber build was that it was like cadence, which kept in line with the whole, you kind of do it to honor your master type thing.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool. And like you know, the mentioning of his name and all that. There's a lot of really cool things I thought in that whole scene. There's a lot of meat in that bone. Because if you really go back and rewatch it, there's just like a lot that you could sink your teeth into. A lot of food references I'm making on that. I must be hungry or something. Ted Adam Green says, and I agree, Hu Yang was the MVP. Yeah, I mean, he was. Let's face it, the guy more or less saved the show in many ways. But again, there were a lot of moments, and this is one of the reasons why, you know, invariably I know David's going to probably join us at some point, or he's going to comment on it, one of the two, whether he's able to join us live or not. And it's going to be like, all right, guys, you're going to owe me the coffees or whatever, you know, because it's like our whole buy me a coffee thing. He supports us, so now he's trying to flip the script on us. But we can't really do that because, again, and I think you would probably agree with this, there's enough in this show that really does keep you engaged, and you can see. And there's a lot of things in the earlier episodes that we criticize, and look, a lot of that still stands. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like, you know, we're retroactively going back and going, well, you know, it's all right or whatever. No. The problems that were in the beginning are still very much issues. In fact, maybe more so, because at least back then we were thinking, well, hey, maybe the rest of the season will be cool or whatever, right? But there were some elements, though, in the beginning of the show that legitimately did get explained in later episodes to where you're thinking, I don't know if I'm really on board with this, or, you know, this seems like terrible acting or writing or direction or, you know, whichever thing you want to pin it on. And then you go back and you're like, oh, all right, I guess that makes sense. So there are some things like that, right? But I mean, for the most part, though, there is enough in this show, I think, to keep you interested, to keep you engaged. Some people are going to disagree with that. And I mean, there's some people that are like, you know what, this is horrible, I hate this. But that's true with any show. I mean, not just any Star Wars show, but any show, period. I mean, I've seen people attack shows that are just, objectively speaking, they're almost perfect, you know? But I guess what it is that they latch on to that one thing or two things that are legitimately wrong with the show. And for them, it takes them out of it, which is a legitimate thing. That's why it's fun to do these kind of shows and discuss and debate and everything, because you actually get a feel for a lot of things. And sometimes, you know, you guys are famous for this. You bring up stuff that we never thought of. Like, oh, well, that's a good point. and you've changed our minds on some things. Let's see, Voyager. Let me just get some of these chats in. It says, like how Cal had Jero Tilpo's lightsaber. Very cool parallel. Yeah, I noticed that too. There's a lot of, it's funny because particularly with Jedi Fallen Order, there's some stuff from other canonical stuff as well that they've referenced here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things in the Fallen Order video game that it almost makes you wonder if they're really going to start to significantly bring some of that stuff into canon. Dragonfly says, in Legends, Thrawn felt like a rival for many of Heroes, whereas this new Thrawn feels more like a rival for Ezra. Maybe that will change now that he is back. Then Voyager says, the fact that we never saw Sabine tell Ezra what she did to rescue him, no emotional payoff for that risky decision she made. Sabine is the reason Thrawn returned, and no reaction from Ezra. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I can't help but wonder if they're saving it for season 2. Again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm giving these guys a bunch of chances or doing the whole apologist thing, but I am trying to at least give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to say, look, maybe there's a bigger story at play. Now, I think that the creators could actually give us a little bit of a window into this. This is why I say that there were some things that, I don't know, were you actually happy with the way that they wrap things up or handle things in this episode? Or, I mean, I know it kind of goes into an overall thoughts kind of thing, but because that's a big part of it.
I'll say this. I think the things that they did well, they did really well. The things that they did bad or not so well, it was like, for example, Morgan Elsbeth, right? Now, I get the fact that, she's a witch now, and essentially, so they gave her Mother Talzin's sword.
Mm-hmm.
So she's using magic is what is imbuing her sword, because quite frankly, it looks like a regular old sword that shouldn't be able to stand up against a lightsaber. It doesn't
Which
look like
I don't understand why she kept. Why she's like all like rubbing her hand on. I'm like, listen, you might want to be careful. I mean, that should be cutting you right now.
But the problem is that I don't feel like she should have been that much of a challenge for Ahsoka. I think we probably should have seen another confrontation, honestly. I mean, it seems like that's all we keep getting, but I think it would have been better if we would have saw it with Baylan yet again. Simply because it's like, okay, at least Baylan is a trained Jedi. He's lived in the temple. He studied the Jedi arts. Saying he's more formidable if you're looking at skill set wise. The fact that Morgan Elsbeth is basically hanging with Ahsoka, to me, was a bit silly.
Well, it depends on a couple of things, though. See, and this is what I'm talking about, because at face value, I would 100% agree. But the problem is, she sort of hung with Ahsoka even before, like in The Mandalorian, in that battle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was a good fighter. Now, I'm not. I don't think, and you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure. I hope, actually. I don't think that Morgan Elsbeth is a character outside of this particular universe. In other words, I think it's a Dave Filoni created thing. I don't remember the character from the expanded universe. Let's put it that way. So,
well,
I'm just saying from that standpoint, I think that they're trying to just, maybe at the time she just had like really good combat skills, and now she's basically has the power of the Night Sisters thing, and so that's what's making her stand up.
Well, I guess I didn't really like the fact, and I remember saying this. I didn't like the fact that she was able to deal or hang with Ahsoka, when she was in The Mandalorian. Simply because it's like, when you think about how powerful Ahsoka is, it's just kind of like, This is a chick who went up against Asajj Ventress at times. She went up against Dooku at times. She went up against
Maul.
her. I mean, she was Maul. She constantly trained with Anakin. She went up against shoot, can't think of the name. But it's like when you look at her, oh, she went up against Vader. You know what I mean? And it's just like, okay.
Not to mention the legions of clone troopers. Or not clone troopers.
Yeah, and that's what I'm yeah, and that's what I'm saying. When you look at her pedigree, it's kind of like this chick should be able to hold a foot candle to Ahsoka if you're going for that, you know. So that's why I'm like,
well, again, I think that's where context is, though, because you know you got to be able to. I think your problem is that she just hasn't, like, we haven't seen anything from her that would demonstrate that. And this is the problem, too, when you're dealing with characters that we've lived with for a long time versus a new character. But see, where I think your point stands, though, is that, okay, Balin's a new character. We have no problems going, oh, yeah, he could stand up to Ahsoka because there's been proper context for that. Where I agree with you is that they didn't, even in the Mandalorian episode, we didn't even know who she was. Because I remember in the Mandalorian, you're kind of like, who's this chick? She was like some government agent or something. Because remember, that's what she was.
Yeah, she was
like the assistant to the Praetorian or something. Yeah, it was kind of like, you know, something like that. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's like she's fighting Ahsoka. And I remember during that, when we reviewed that episode, and you guys could go back and check it out. All of our Mandalorian reviews are on this channel. And it was pretty funny because I remember pretty vividly, actually, us just shredding that. Like, okay, we thought it was a cool battle. Or like, who is this? How on earth is this woman who, with the information we had? Now, at the time, I think I was giving this a partial free pass because I said, okay, look, we don't know who she is. They're purposely keeping her identity a secret. So I had a little bit of goodwill there. And, you know, she goes up against Ahsoka again, and it's like, okay, you know, fine. She's pretty much like tweaked out by the Night Sister thing. But even then, it's kind of like you said, you know, Ahsoka's got the whole experience thing. I mean, it's like, it's the Rocky thing that you and I talk about all the time. This is why we had a problem with Rocky 5. Because in Rocky 5, you know, he goes up against Tommy Gunn, who is essentially like kind of a student of his, somebody who had raw talent or whatever. And then they're fighting at the end. And it's like, well, Rocky should have mowed this guy down. Because Rocky went up against Drago. Drago could have easily beaten that guy. Clubber Lang could have easily beaten that guy. And Apollo, had he lived, could have easily beaten him. So it's like, dude, Rocky, who beat all these guys, should have been able to do that. Same thing. Is there any doubt in anybody's mind that Vader would have just gone in and mowed all these people down? Absolutely not. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my big hangups. But moving beyond that, I think I'm still on the edge about Sabine using the Force to bring.
Oh, we'll get into that. I'm more than just on the edge about it. I'll tell you something. Let me get to some of these chats. Let me get to some of these chats, and then I will tell you the thing that bothers me the most. Like the thing where I was literally yelling at my television. Seriously. This would have been a fun one. We should have done a watch party for this one. Yeah. It would have been a fun thing. So let's see. Dragonfly says, Night Sisters just amped her with power. Yeah, exactly. He goes on to say, it felt mid-difficulty for her as it should have been. Yeah, I could see what you're saying. You know, it's kind of like, it wasn't like Ahsoka was really struggling against Morgan, but she wasn't mowing her down either. It was mid. So I agree with what he's saying, but I think that what you're saying is no. It should have been mid anything. It should have been like, okay, bye.
It should have been like when Ezra tried to walk up against Vader that time on Rebels. That's
that was funny. That was just all right. Voyager says, to be honest, I think the reason Morgan Elsbeth has gravitas against Ahsoka is because Diana Lee Inosanto is Bruce Lee's goddaughter, and she is a trained and accomplished martial artist for decades. Now, see, I would agree with that, but that's the actress, not the character. See, if you wanted to write somebody that was, really super cool like the actress, then, and look, maybe that is what Morgan Elsbeth is supposed to be. But I think our problem is there's no exposition for this. There's no
context.
There's no context for it. There's nothing that we've been presented so far that gives us any information. Now, again, you could make the argument, I guess, that, well, I mean, you're not going to just give the dossier of every single person. But, I mean, look, all you would have to do is put in a line where Ahsoka says something like, oh, man, Morgan Elsbeth, she's whatever, I mean, or people talking about her favorably. I mean, look at the Emperor. He wasn't even really seen in the flesh until Return of the Jedi. He was seen in a hologram in Empire Strikes Back. But in A New Hope, the way they talked about the Emperor and the fact that you knew that he was Vader's boss, you just knew from that context how powerful he was. He wasn't even there. I think that's the point, He wasn't even there. Absolutely. And you knew. So, and then, of course, Dragonfly goes on to say, Baylan being high difficulty. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Voyager says, Baylan actually defeating Ahsoka in that battle on Cetos was a great writing decision. I would agree with that. Gave Baylan more gravitas. See, again. And then Dragonfly, of course, occurs with...
Destiny.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think that these are a lot of things that we're just struggling with. And again, it could all be fixed in the writing. It's not that the characters are the problem here. I am perfectly willing to accept that Morgan could stand up to Ahsoka and be a worthy opponent for her if I had a little bit more context. That's all.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I just wanted to point out, too, because it just popped in my head.
Okay.
One of the other reasons why, remember when I brought up the whole TIE fighter thing in the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it just, I don't know why I just thought of it. I think it's because we're actually almost going a little chronological today with some of our, usually when we're talking about this show, we're all over the place. We're talking about the end and the beginning and all this stuff. But today, I don't know why. Maybe it's just, I don't know. But we've been going more or less along with the episode. Not on purpose, by the way. But I remember that when they were getting away from the TIE fighter, what she did? She flew into the TIE fighter and, see, if they had sent more than two, then that scene wouldn't have, I mean, it wouldn't have ended like that. You remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, when they were okay, yeah. When Sabine was flying the
yes,
the starfighter, I want to call it.
Yeah.
Well, the Jedi shuttle, whatever they were calling it.
Yeah, Jedi. I don't even know exactly.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Now, as far as Sabine, okay, so the thing that bothered me the most, I mean, I wasn't too bothered by when, she was reaching out and she called her lightsaber, because that was sort of like a Luke Hoth thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was when Luke, he had been studying the Force, like Sabine had been studying the Force, and it was like desperation, because Luke knew he was going to get killed or eaten or whatever by the Wampa, so he essentially was just like, it's now or never, right? And it went to him. I didn't have a problem there. What I had a problem with is she does that, okay? And like a scene or two later, it's like, yeah, go ahead and hop up on this Death Star. I got you. I'll fling you.
Oh, you're talking about like, yeah, I'll push and you,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, like I
slingshot,
got
because
this.
Kanan and Ezra used to do that a lot too, and that's where Sabine got it
Right, but
from.
I'm just like,
But it's like you just
just
learn how to use.
and not only
Yeah,
did you
like
just learn how to use it, you you just brought a lightsaber to you. Now
yeah,
you suddenly, like, 2 minutes later, this is
they're
very
trying this big
Rey of
risky
her. This is
maneuver.
this
Yeah,
is just, I mean, I just lost it. I
yeah,
was yelling at the
yeah. I felt the
TV.
same way.
I'm
I was
like,
like, oh, come
okay,
on, really?
I mean, like 3 episodes ago, she couldn't even move a cup.
Cup.
Now she's gonna
Hmm.
fling a human being across like this great chasm, to a. It's like, come on, man. I mean,
Mm-mm-mm.
it's just like that's just. And again,
Yeah,
I would have even gone. All right, you know what?
I could see Ezra doing that.
Yes, but my thing was what made it even worse to me was the fact that you did it like in the next scene.
Yeah. Well, what I love though, what they gave that scene some satisfaction to me was Ezra's hesitancy though. He was kind of like, you
That's
sure?
true. That is
Because it's
that is
like,
true. That yes. Yes.
I know what your power level is, and you're not really. I'm not trying to
Exactly. It's
discourage
like,
you, but
look,
I'm
I'm
saying,
I'm just right. I'm not trying to
let's
be
keep it
that
realistic.
guy, but this isn't, some I
I'm
mean
not jumping
about
off some
the
little
the one
creek or
funny
something.
thing that I thought that was kind of cool though, where it was almost like they do something really crazy unrealistic like that, and then they actually add a little bit of realism when, yes, he was hesitant, but then she goes, the longer that you wait, the harder this is going to be.
It's gonna be. Yeah, I love that part
So
too.
I'm like, all right, you know what? That's cool. Now, Dragonfly, actually, he kind of differs a little bit. He says, look, I buy it. She's high on confidence and adrenaline. Yeah, but confidence and adrenaline is not like a force thing, right? I mean,
Well, I guess if you believe in yourself and you believe in the force, and I guess
oh
to a certain
boy.
degree, I mean, because they've always said that though. Because you always hear them like trust the force, trust the, So it's like, all right, if you finally realize that you can do something, it's like, oh, I can really do this now, and your adrenaline is high in that moment, and it's like it's a do or die moment. I could kind of see that, but
I'm
it's
gonna
still,
I'm
don't
I'm
get me
just
wrong.
gonna look. I'm gonna open a vein right here on YouTube Live. Oh, look, it's David. David says, "Sorry, gentlemen, I forgot my victory lap was tonight at 7. Yes, the Master Jedi is here, Mr. Vansel. Anything you want to say? Well, if you had actually, first I'd like to say don't be late, but I mean, I guess that ship has flown. I was gonna say sailed, but we got to keep it Star Wars. Second thing that I would say is, look, man, if you had, been on earlier, just saying, you would have known that although there's some problems, and this is a lackluster season finale, which of course I'm assuming you're going to go back and watch every delicious moment of this review, that, you know, overall, it wasn't a bad series. It just wasn't a great series. I don't even know if I would necessarily even call it good. It was meh, I mean, and
At best.
again, next week, because it's going to be a pre-recorded one for next Friday. I forgot what we're doing. Do we even decide what we're doing Monday?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, I
But
don't.
I,
I thought we did.
but I,
Well, maybe we didn't. Well, whatever it
but I
is,
do
it'll be
have
live.
something though.
Yeah, we'll have something. It'll be live, whatever it is.
I have one already, but
Well, what is it?
Well, we're actually going to talk about Peridia and like what Balin aims to do there.
Oh, yeah, that would
There's
be a
some
nice little
speculations.
sequel. Yeah, you got something that you can send me to. All right.
Yep.
All right, well, that's what we'll talk about Monday. We might as well get that out of the way kind of early in the show, actually, for once. And when, of course, you'll remind me of this at the end, right? When I go to announce it and invariably forget about
when I
it.
send it to you.
Yeah, you can even send it now if you want. David. David says, Monday we go buy David his latte. Oh, you know what? So here's here's the thing. So that's what we're gonna do. A week from, well, I was gonna say today. Week from yesterday, next Friday, it's gonna be a pre-recorded show, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna do and David, you're not gonna want to miss this. We're gonna do a series retrospective. We'll take a look at everything that was good, that was bad, that was, mediocre, good writing, bad writing, everything. We're just going to pretty much go over the series as kind of a final thing, because I don't want to do that too much today, because I really just want to focus on the episode today. I just want to focus on the season. A lot of times for season finales, you're always tempted to start commenting on the series as a whole, which, I mean, that's natural. We do that with every episode, actually, but I don't want to go too crazy in like reviewing the series. I just want to stick with this. So, yeah, the force power thing, I had a big problem with the whole, I just moved a lightsaber finally. Now I'm ready to throw you over a, I'm ready to throw you over a thing. Voyager says, it would have been so cool to see Ezra make that jump himself. Yeah, exactly. I was wondering that too, actually. Cal Kestis can do a double jump plus air leap. But it is what it is, I guess. Well, Cal Kestis is also a video game character, right? I mean, this is this is the problem that you have to be very careful with in Star Wars canon, is the fact that they have to make these things more excited and playable as a video game. So, but at the same time, and this is where I think it frustrates us as fans sometimes, is, you start seeing, look, even as early as The Force Unleashed, we're seeing this guy bringing down Star Destroyers with the Force and all that, which is viable, because the books a lot of times would illustrate that. I mean, Yoda threw like a planet or a moon out of orbit or something. But the thing is, it's like they'll show you all these amazing feats of the Force, right? And then you'll go see a movie or a TV show or whatever, and they're like limited. And you're like, well, wait a minute. This other guy's bringing down Star Destroyer. That's the only thing that I will say that was good about the sequels, is the fact that you started to see some of this stuff. Like Kylo and Rey's little tug of war with the ship. And then, eventually she sent lightning by mistake and destroyed it. That was kind of cool. You saw a little bit more, I guess, just big bravado demonstrations in the Force. So I thought that was cool. Dragonfly talking to Voyager says, you bring up a good point. Force jump has always been Ezra's specialty, but double jump is a game mechanic. Exactly. It's like a, press X twice kind of thing, So Peter Griffin joins us now. He says, hey, cheers head to head. Right back at you there, Peter. Ahsoka could have been worse, like Andor. Giggity. Andor. All right, whatever. But you know what? That right there, we'll just leave the Andor part out of that. But look, that's not exactly a resounding endorsement. You know what? It could have been worse. But, it could have been better. Peter goes on to say, I was hoping when Sabine used the Force and caught her saber, she looked up and it was Ezra who did it. That would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, that actually would have been cool.
That would have been... And a little bit more realistic, I guess.
Realistic and believable, because it's like, okay, you still not there yet, but,
Yeah. Kind of like in Halloween Ends. There's a lot of varying opinions. It's going to be fun when we actually get to our... when we convert the Friday shows into, like, just general entertainment discussions.
Yeah.
Because I'd be really curious on what this group thinks about a lot of different franchises and, whether it's movie or TV or whatever. But in Halloween Ends, you had, I forgot the character's name already, but he was basically trying to be the killer kind of a thing. And then, but there was that one scene where he wasn't there yet. So Michael had to come in and, all right, man.
Oh, when they're in the house?
Yeah.
House,
It's like, I'm going to do the heavy lifting this time, but, it's like, all right, you got in a little over your head. That's what that reminded me of, actually. David's like, how is meh not a win for me? Mr. Vansel, you hyped this up. I did not hype this up. And hype up Yandu? before it started and swore it would be better than what I was saying. Then you say it's meh, come on guys, just say it. The problem is when I say that, right? First of all, if you remember, I was pretty much brutal on the first 2 or 3 episodes of this show. I said it would get better, and it got better.
I think he was more so referring to before we saw Ahsoka, we were all like, you and I both were kind of like really super excited for this. We thought it was going to be really great because it's Filoni and he's, done so well with the Mandalorian.
That was true, which is why we were so brutal on the first 2 or 3 episodes. Kind of like everybody else in the comments and community. Well, I can't say all the comments because some of the comments were pretty harsh. But again, you also have to understand that we're all coming from this from a different angle. I personally have like 40 some years of Star Wars that I've been consuming all this time. I'm looking at it through a different lens, to be honest. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think sometimes, and this is probably true for everybody that's here. Look, we all came into Star Wars at different periods in our lives. Some of us grew up from it. Like in my case, I was 6 years old still when A New Hope was first released in the theater. I went and saw it, and it was my thing. Like, I'm like, this is the thing that speaks to me.
My destiny.
Yep, pretty much. And I had been a hardcore Star Wars fan ever since. But the difference is, I can also pretty much say, okay, this is horrible. And we're pointing out a lot of bad things. I mean, look, I would admit, if this show was totally terrible, I would say it. But it's not. There's enough good, particularly when you take season 4 and season 4 was an amazing episode. 5 was good. So, it actually did get progressively better. Now, of course, there were problems in each of those episodes, but at the same time, it was better. And the other problem is a lot of Star Wars fans suffer from this. Everybody goes pure subjectivity. I like or I hate. We try to at least put a lot of objectivity. Sure, we give our opinions. There's times where there's something that's technically brilliant, but I just don't like it. There's other times where something, objectively from a writing perspective, directing, acting, storytelling, whatever it is, it's terrible, but you end up liking it anyway. And I'm pretty much, and so are you, upfront when we feel that way. But when we're taking something like Ahsoka, we're going to be objective about it. We're not going to put just our own opinions in it. But I will say this. Did it live up to our expectations? No. Did it live up to yours?
Absolutely not.
No, absolutely not. So, I mean, if that's what you're looking for, well, then you got it. No, it didn't live up to the hype that they put up to it. It didn't live up to the hype that we thought about. You know what? I would say it's probably maybe slightly better than Obi-Wan. Or on par with Obi-Wan. Because Obi-Wan actually had a lot of the same things, right? It had some good moments, but it didn't live up to its expectations. And I would say the same thing about this series. Peter basically says, it was strange Sabine could force push further than Maul did with Ezra and Rebels. And then he goes on to say, episode 4, 5, and 6 saved it. First, I'm like, 456. I'll give it a 6. D's get degrees. That's right. I gave... which one's this one? All right.
I gave WOT...
yeah, season 2.
2. And I scored on so far the books. And so far away from the books, half the book we just refused to watch.
Yeah, not sure what the acronym on that one is. Oh, Wheel of Time. Yeah, okay, I've never Never heard of that one. The conversation between Sabine and Ahsoka, Voyager says, towards the end was so flat and emotionless. She let Sabine's decision and betrayal slide so flippantly. Yeah, see, the first one, I have notes on that one. Because now we're actually going.
Yeah, I wanted to see that whole typical, I'll probably say 90s sitcom moment where the father usually have to yell at the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hey, what you did could have, do you realize what you could have done? You could have blah, 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 blah. But you know what? You did you had to follow your heart, and I understand that. And you see where like they chastise, but at the same time, it's like, on the flip side of it, they do still support that, the decision in a way. And that's what I was kind of more or less looking for in that moment. So I know what they're kind of talking, what Voyager's saying with that, is that like, yeah, it was almost like, oh, I know.
Well, here's
Okay,
another one.
well,
I'll give you another example, right?
Mhm.
Where it's another no tension, no nothing. That whole ride into the castle. When they basically stormed Thrawn's castle. I mean, it looked great. I mean, there was a lot of really cool action, but there just wasn't any real tension. They're just kind of doing their thing, and the Night Trooper assault felt a little bit rushed, I thought. I mean, it was great seeing Ezra using his lightsaber and everything, but again, it didn't have the same feel that the original trilogy or even the prequels had. Like, there was no real stakes. There wasn't any. It just kind of executed it,
One of the things I did enjoy, and it's funny because you have this on the screen right now, and we're going to talk about this on Monday, but I do like the fact that they're showing like the father, and that's the son.
Yeah, the daughter's there, her head's just cut off.
Yeah, her dead.
There's
You
a
can see her body
theory
with the
behind
head.
that. I mean, we'll get a little bit more
Yeah.
into it Monday, but there is a theory behind why that is.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, but I just saying I like the fact that this is what Balin's kind of searching for. He's on his own path. Shin, I don't. It seems like she wants to almost rule that little army of
I didn't
guys.
understand that, man.
I didn't understand that part
I did
either, 'cause
not
she
understand that scene at all. I was like
was
watching
kinda
it, going, I don't
Yeah.
get this.
I was
Like, I have
okay,
no
is this
idea
like
what any of this means. And that's the thing. So her scene and Balin's scene, even though I like Balin's scene, I like the fact that they're introducing this into like a live action kind of thing. No doubt, right? I mean, it's a Clone
Mhm.
Wars thing. It's just as canon as anything else. I mean, Lucas came up with this stuff. My biggest issue though is that it asks more questions than it answers.
What?
All
This
this.
whole
Yeah,
Well,
because
the Shin
the Balin part
the
I
Shin
didn't
thing
mind so
is
much. The Shin thing, though, I don't know.
well, I think Shin's whole thing is that she's looking for some sort of retribution for something. And it seems like that's really her thing. And Balin's like, okay, you go ahead and fulfill your quest because that's what you want. But that's not where my desire is. My desire is for more. But I understand what you want to do, and I'm allowing you to go do what you feel is right for
So
you.
she just wants to go
So
and subject something.
well, I think she wants to. I think she really has an issue with Ahsoka and Sabine, and for whatever reason, we don't know her reasoning yet. But I think she has a real issue with them, or as far as the Jedi is concerned, because just in context of the questions that she's asked Balin, like, hey, do you miss it? Why are you so, just certain things. And then it seems like she kind of has it out for Ahsoka and Sabine in particular. So it's like, what happened? You know?
Well, it's true
And even when she
because
made this
wasn't it the last episode where Ahsoka reached out and said, we can help you or whatever, and she just, ran
Yeah,
away,
she
or
just took off. Yeah, she took off.
I don't know if it's necessarily. I mean, that's one possible explanation, I guess, and better writing would have actually have. I mean, it would have been nice to have some of the context again, like maybe show us that throughout the series so we pick up on this. But
Or maybe she craves power.
that's what I think it is. I honestly don't think there's anything. The only reason why I think she had it in for Ahsoka and Sabine was she was just in the way, and Balin said, "Go stop these people." I mean, I'm not getting any, vibes of you did something to me in the past kind of thing. But at the same time, I think it probably is as simple as, yeah, she just craves power, and I don't know, but it's kind of like it's sort of like what you said, she just I don't know, just that whole ending with her was so vague. I mean, on one hand, it could be obvious, like you said, it could just be, hey, you guys,
Hmm.
I'm the new leader now. You're gonna answer to me. That's why she ignites the lightsaber. Hey, this thing's more powerful than anything you guys have. So
Right.
it could very well be. But it would have been nice to have gotten that explanation. I mean, that's
Yeah. Almost like she wants her own thing to rule, or
yeah, that's what I'm saying. She just wants to
you know what I'm saying?
subjugate,
Yeah.
something. Dwight joins us, and he says, I like the series. He says, I seem to be the only one around these parts. No, I mean, we don't hate it. We're just pointing out a lot of things about it that weren't very good. Um, it had problems, but I mean, I
Yeah.
liked it. I didn't hate it. What would be really interesting, and I might actually do this maybe before we record the next show, if I can. I don't know if I'll have time, but I would almost like to watch it one to what episode is this? 8, 1 to 8, just like binge it and watch
Hmm.
it as like one continuous thing and see how that affects what I think of it.
Okay.
I just think that
Yeah.
might be kind of cool.
Yeah. I think that in some ways, it could help. The biggest thing I had, and we'll cover this when we start reviewing the entire season. Um, but it's like it just took too long to get up and running for
Oh,
or to get to
completely.
some parts. The Hera scene, when they kind of Ezra makes it um onto Thrawn ship, and then he eventually does his typical Ezra thing where he always ends up in some clone troopers uniform. Like that's kind of his thing. It's like Batman or something. Like he has to dress up like a clone trooper in some medium. But then the fact, I mean, how he revealed himself to Hera, but then there was no Sabine and there was no Ahsoka. So I know Hera was kind of like, well, I sent them to find you, and then you come back, but they don't come back. And um, I like the anticipation that kind of builds, because it's like now it's like, okay, she knows Thrawn is like basically here, and now they have to kind of figure out, okay, what are they going to do about it? Um, the the- did Sabine see Anakin first? Or she felt like, I think Sabine felt Anakin or something like that in that little, and then he appeared as a Force ghost, and Ahsoka kind of looked off and saw him just standing there, and I'm just kind of like, why would Sabine feel Anakin? That was kind of weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I I even have problem. I mean, look, like again, I like the zombie night troopers. I thought that was cool.
Yeah,
I actually enjoyed that. I enjoyed um the fact that the night troopers were watching the Elsbeth Ahsoka battle. I thought that was cool.
yeah,
You
it's like
know,
you're not letting them out the circle, like a
but I mean, one of the things that I thought was funny. This is another one of those things that I picked up on that I don't think a lot of people. I mean, maybe some people do. I don't know. It's just like a quirk of mine, I guess. But I couldn't help but laugh because you had Thrawn basically like launching this whole battery of, lasers, right, against just this whole assault on that mountain, just munching it up.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the troopers are there shooting at, of course, our heroes, not even registering the fact that you do know that your bosses right now are the ones firing on this planet. You might want to, again, I mean, they're probably like the zombie, so they don't care, but I don't know. I just found that, like, wow, these guys are really on mission. It's like, yes, even though the guys that gave us the mission to kill these people are now killing us, technically, we're going to stay on point here.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a lot of there was some other things that I thought were cool too that reference earlier. So like when Thrawn basically was talking about Ahsoka and hinted that she could fall too. When she was basically talking about Anakin and sort of juxtaposed it with her and everything. I thought that was kind of a nice touch. I'm sure we'll talk about this more on the Monday episode, because you want to concentrate, of course, on the scene that we've got, right over there.
Mm-hmm.
But did you catch the whole white owl? That was,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that visiting Ahsoka has some significance to it. It was really weird too that Thrawn ended up at Dathomir. I don't remember if was that always, because see, the couple things that bothered me on that were, I'm not really sure why he's there, and I also don't know what's in those crates. It bothers me that we never figured out or found out what was in these. Yeah, it's like, why? And this goes into something that Voyager says. He says, they didn't explain anything. That's exactly it. Now Dwight kicks in and say, it is better on a binge. I actually did that leading up to 7. So maybe that's a thing that could end up coloring your viewpoints on it or something. Like maybe you go, okay, well, if you binge it, maybe it's a little bit better. Now, I will say I wouldn't be doing my job as somebody reviewing this if I didn't say that a show should be able to stand alone on each episode. However, I can understand how it might be better as a binge, because a lot of times these things are supposed to be like a giant, 6-8 hour movie or whatever, cut up into pieces.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to ask you a question. And this goes out to everybody, listening.
The sound of your voice.
Yes, within the sound of my voice. So Ahsoka is essentially like a movie that's been divided into 8 chunks. So it's not episodic like you would have like a typical TV show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that, one episode leads into the next and so on and so forth. It's supposed to continue the story. There's an overall story line or thread that's going through. Now, we've seen this, of course, in other mediums. Well, of course, especially with Star Wars, especially with The Mandalorian. Now, and I always mess up his name, but Rick Fumaya, I think that's somewhere close to how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, more or less.
But he directed this he directed the season finale.
Oh, I didn't even.
So my question is, I wonder should Ahsoka or other shows have the same director? Does it really benefit for them to have multiple or different types of directors? Or is it best that they kind of pick one director to kind of almost like a Deborah Chow? Like Deborah Chow did Obi-Wan all the way through. But so you kind of had
Didn't Gareth Edwards also do Andor all the way through? I'm pretty sure he did. I'm not entirely sure. I know he wrote it all, but I don't know if he directed it all. But I thought maybe somebody in the chat can probably enlighten us or whatever.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, because his whole thing was it had to be shot practically. Like he had all these stipulations if he was going to do it.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, and that's what I mean. So and that was going to be my next point. It was like, okay, we see the advantages that Andor had because of that. So going forward with Star Wars, especially on with a series, is that something that we need to really, or by we I mean Disney, they really need to focus on? Is like, should they have multiple directors for certain series, and then other series they just need to have one dedicated director? Because you get certain performances that are better out of the actors based upon the director. Like Ahsoka and a lot of the other characters, we got more life out of them when we see them being directed or steered by someone who may be more of a actor's director, as opposed to someone who doesn't have that much experience.
Well, yeah, and of course we all know Filoni. I mean, he'll get
Hmm.
there. He will get there.
Right.
I think Filoni will end up being a really great live action director. He's just not there yet. So from that standpoint, right. But I guess this is like a holdover from the television series of old, right? Is the fact that
Hmm.
the one that comes to mind because I'm just watching the weekly podcast right now is Smallville. So Smallville's a good example because Smallville is an episodic show that has a story arc that runs through all the seasons, that continues, that builds. But
Hmm.
it's different in the sense that it's a little bit more like a television show. It's kind of when television shows started to change.
Yeah, that was right on the
Because,
like the beginning of that. Absolutely.
sure, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's like you said, when you look at something like Ahsoka, I mean, that's literally like if you just, you know, got rid of beginning and ending credits, you could have ran and edited that thing as one just solid long movie.
Hmm.
And if you're going to do that and then chop it up like that, then maybe I would agree that it would be better to have one, maybe two max directors that would actually carry the series. Have one writer and maybe one or two directors. If you're going to handle it a little bit more like it's an episodic series, but it has a little bit of a
Right.
thread maybe that goes through. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is something that comes in mind there. That was the Star Trek people going, you know what? Let's go back to the spirit of the older shows that were more episodic in nature and not serial. And whereas Discovery was kind of like how these Star Wars shows are, where it's literally, you're picking up from the last episode kind of thing. And you might have the odd episode here and there, but that's generally it, right? Like the filler type stuff. But yes, then I would definitely say this is something that you would have to do. Now, Dragonfly chats in. He says, I agree that one, maybe two, there you go, one, maybe two directors for a series, unless it's anthology based series. And that's another thing, too. If you did an anthology, because that's another type of series, actually, that we never talked about. Now,
Hmm.
they've done that in animation, right? Like Tales of the Jedi being the latest example. Visions, love it or hate it, that's another anthology based series, right? So they could easily do, like, say, a live action anthology based series, which would be awesome. They could base it even on the from a certain point of view books, actually. That would be really cool. Um Dragonfly says, I really liked Vision season 2. Well, actually, overall, so did we. We tease about it a lot, but if you actually go back and our reviews, the first episode, I kind of like, you hated that one. You really hated that one. But
Yes,
if I
indeed.
remember correctly, that was the only one that you actually hated. The other ones, you kind of went from you could take it or leave it to you really enjoyed it kind of a thing. So, if I'm sure we're going to have to do Vision season 3 because even though it hasn't been official, I know you did send me that article that was talking about it.
Hmm.
No release date has been announced or anything like that yet, but look, they're going to do it. 2 was more successful than 1, I think. Dragonfly, I think he's talking about Visions here, says good stories about Jedi recruitment. that would actually be, a cool thing for an anthology thing too, right? If you wanted to go back and show how the Jedi recruited people for the temple, you could.
Well, that was kind of, I think he's talking about the Tales of the Jedi with Ahsoka. They showed how,
Yeah. Well, that too.
they
That
recruited
too.
her. And
Sure. I mean, well, and you could do that in live action. I mean, why not? Right? Because, I mean, that was the only one. Actually, a lot of Tales of the Jedi focused on Dooku, which I thought was kind of cool because they filled in some gaps in the Clone Wars type of a thing, which I would love to see something like that. David's got a chat that's popped in right now. He says, today's Star Wars needs multiple. If your episode is trash, you're fired. Well, I mean, I guess you could go pretty harsh, but trash to who? See, this is the problem that a lot of people don't understand, that any series that's been going on for more than 10 or 20 years, which Star Wars clearly has, is going to suffer this problem. Is that you have the initial generation that generally feels the same. When the first generation of any franchise is released, you get the fans of that franchise versus people who are not fans of that franchise. Okay? That's kind of like the first wave, if you will. The second wave is when the second generation comes in. Now it's a three-way war because you still have the people that are like, I'm not into this. This is stupid. Then, of course, you have the original fans, and now you got the new ones that are coming in, and they have a different set of expectations. They have a different set of views. They're coming to it from the lens of people from a different generation. And even though there might be a timelessness that goes across multiple generations, there's still going to be things that each generation is going to get out of it. And even within a generational context, you still have different types of fans. Some people like high action type of stuff. Some people like more thought-provoking things. Some people like a more romantic type of a deal. I mean, everybody's getting something a little bit different out of it. So as time goes on, you have the issue of you've got this franchise, it's like 40 years or something. And now you have to try to, what Disney, I think this is where they're making a mistake. They're trying to please everybody. And Lucas never did that. Lucas is like, look, I'm making this for me. You guys like it, great. And the brilliant thing that he did, usually, I mean, look, Lucas made some missteps as well. But one of the brilliant things that he always did was he stuck to very broad strokes, timeless themes, nothing. It was very evergreen, basically. And it was very classic storytelling techniques that have stood the test of time for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that's the framework in which he created Star Wars. And so because of that, it spoke to not just multiple generations, but even different types of fans within those generations. Because you could find something for everybody. It wasn't specific. And I think that that's the problem with some of this stuff is like, okay, if you want to take David's point and say, go episode by episode, it's not going to be for everybody. It's like even the series, right? Andor is a specific type of a show. Yes, it's a Star Wars show, but it's a niche Star Wars show. It's just not going to be for everybody. And you can't say it sucks because you don't like it. Because it could be a very well-made show. It's just a genre that you don't like. And same thing if they do, which would be a dream come true for me, if they did a Star Wars horror film. I'm sure there's people that would probably be like,
Well, I think it just really boils down to, like, when you look at stuff, your characters and have to work. Like, and I think that's really David's thing is, I think his whole point is I want to, whether I like it or not, like I want to be able to believe what I'm seeing or what you want me to believe, So if you want me to believe that this woman can beat up 10 guys at once, how are you going to show how she earns that my respect in that regard. Like, how can you prove to me that she's that skilled? Or if you want to show um like someone who's missing someone, like, okay, that person has to really be able to communicate that through acting, body language, and just really act their butts off and deliver. And I think that's more or less what he's referring to, is just that if it's trash, because in the writing, of course, we always say the writing is really the core of it all. Like, it has to make sense. Sure, we see problems in the writing. Sure, we see problems in some directing, and I think that's more or less of what he's talking about. But overall, I agree with you, though. Like, yes, I mean, within Star Wars, you can fit many genres. You could do a buddy cop type thing. You almost kind of had that with Solo, with Han and Lando.
I would
Yeah,
have
that
liked
could
to
have
have seen more than that.
yeah, you could actually make that a buddy cop thing. You could do um romantic comedy with Leia and Han, honestly, because those two together just worked. I mean, if Carrie Fisher was still living, yeah, that would have been a hilarious, almost like a life with Leia and Han, something like that.
Oh, they almost did that. It's a book. The Courtship of Princess Leia.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a bunch of things, like, so within Star Wars, the Star Wars franchise, you can fit different genres under that umbrella and be successful. But by and large, the saga films is what got everybody into Star Wars to begin with. And so I think when you're going back into your bread and butter, the bread and butter has to be tight. It has to be together. And
Well, it has to make sense
um
within its context.
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Voyager. They never showed a flashback of seeing Sabine and Ahsoka during the Night of 1,000 Tears destruction of Mandalore. Yeah, I know. And I think that they purposely are skipping over some of this stuff. They needed to show a flashback, show Sabine learning her family died. Excuse me. Again, I think a lot of that is because they haven't done a good job of actually showing, like, look, this is Rebel Season 5. The idea that somebody could just walk into the show, no, you can't. They said that you could, but you can't.
Right.
And so I would agree that it would have been nice to catch up the casual fan if they had just said, look, here's a couple of things like a flashback. Didn't they do an opening crawl in the first episode? Well, I mean, it wasn't like the Star Wars, but I mean, it was kind of like a vertical type.
Yeah.
I think they did. So, yeah, just do something like that. I mean, that would have been fine. Just something like we're always saying, right? Add a little bit of context. Give the fans a little bit of knowledge. And ultimately, I think that would solve a lot of David's problems, too. It's like, look, because he's relatively new to Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if you give us characters that we believe, and this is like Rey, her problem is that, she had all this power, but we never knew where it came from. And of course, a lot of the critics of people who felt that way are like, oh, you just don't like powerful female characters. It's like, well, you're not really giving us a powerful female character, first of all. You're giving us pseudo males. That's what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But even if that weren't the case, even if you were to just, let's just keep it within the context of the character herself. You're not really giving us any context of how she got all this stuff. Now, you'll get, of course, opponents of that line of thinking that will say something to the effect of, well, that's not necessarily true. They basically were keeping it shrouded in mystery. But they weren't really. They were, but they weren't. It wasn't executed well. And I think that this is what a lot of Star Wars fans want to see. They just want to see, look, just let us know where we are and what's going on. And in fact, if you even go back for a second to the Star Wars Visions thing, we always tease about, how you hate it or whatever. But one of the primary reasons why you end up hating an episode is only because you don't understand what's going on. There's like no context for where we are in any kind of a story. And look, we know it's not happening in the proper Star Wars universe, but it's like, I don't know what I'm watching. I'm watching a lot of pretty art, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
this is visually stunning, but I don't, there's no story here.
I'm not. All right.
And I think that that's the problem. And that might be what David's talking about too, is the fact that, like, look, if you're going to present us with this scene or this episode or whatever it is, at least give me some of the context. Now, there is context, but what a lot of people in his position, and this has been a criticism that you and I have talked about forever, it's like, hey, here's a series. By the way, you had to have actually watched like these other 3 series plus read these 5 books in order to understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you get people like Voyager, people like some of the other people in this chat who have played the video games, watched a lot of the stuff. They're going to know what's going on. We know what's going on, but that's why I always say when, somebody goes, "Oh, this is horrible. Why don't you just admit it's horrible?" Well, why would I? I'll admit that certain elements of it are horrible, where poor writing or direction or acting or whatever is concerned. But see, the problem is I know all the context for this stuff. So to me, it's not horrible because I understand all that. See, and that's where I think Disney isn't doing a very good job of cultivating its fan base. You're actually alienating some people. And then you're causing toxicity because now you got wars online where you get the people who understand what's going on versus the people who just think it's crap. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, well, I guess Ahsoka is wrapped up. I mean, this is it's been interesting. I'm sure everyone's had.
Not really. I love all these things that are not exactly a resounding endorsement. It's like it's almost like when your kid brings home like a terrible drawing and you're trying to diplomatically not say it sucks. Right.
And yeah, I think what it is that Ahsoka has some high points and it's definitely had its lows. So I think we just have to, everybody's going to have their opinion. We're going to give everybody a chance to eventually grade this season, and let us know what they think about it.
Well, right now, while we're kind of wrapping up and talking, give us your number grades for this episode. Let us know. Because I mean, that's something you and I still have to do. But I mean, I want everybody in the chat to start, blowing through theirs so that by the time we're done.
For my episode, I'm going to give it 8.3.
Wow.
I gave it an 8.3 only because I like the battle. There are some key things, like I said, that were cool. Like I said, the Ezra building his lightsaber, finding seeing something like that. The Kanan references. The fact that Ahsoka kind of learned how to deal with Sabine a little bit better. She's trying to, groom. I don't want to say groom. That's probably not the best word you want to use in 2023. But she's trying to, educate her and she's realizing there's a give and take, and she realizes her part in the failure of Sabine, and that's preventing her from growing. I did like the fact that we got to see Peridia as far as the father, son, and the daughter, which we get into another day. The battles were cool. I love the fact that Thrawn was kind of like, look, just keep them at bay. We're almost out of here. He was, and the fact that he kind of just like looked at her like, what you got to do, right? Well, I'll leave you to it. So it was just kind of like he just didn't care.
Yeah.
Like, well, I liked the night troopers. Those were cool, then especially them coming back from the dead or whatnot. Um, and then I also like the reunion of Hera and Ezra. Like seeing that moment, like okay, that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll give it a 5. I'll go like right
Ooh,
even
wow.
because
Okay.
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I saw good things about it. I saw bad things about it. I probably would have given it maybe closer to a 7 if it wasn't the season finale. See, that's the
Mm,
problem that I really had, and that I have to admit really um it really colored the episode for me. Um,
gotcha.
it just was a really lackluster season finale in my opinion. There were a lot of things. I mean, even with Anakin, right? I mean, we get the Anakin Force Ghost. He's visiting Ahsoka. He's now he's watching over like Ahsoka and Sabine. It's like, where is he with Luke? I mean, a lot of people can go, well, we don't know that. Yeah, we don't know because nobody's given us any real context. I mean, it's almost like this whole thing's on a need to know basis. It was okay. I mean, again, it was like it's right there in the middle for me because the scenes that I liked, the stuff that I liked about this episode, I really did like. Kind of like what you mentioned. A lot of the Night
Hmm.
Sister stuff, the Night Troopers, Ezra reuniting with Hera, some of the other stuff. Um, but I also didn't think that we got a lot of payoffs. I mean, there just wasn't there wasn't even a real cliffhanger. It was kind of like, I mean, just there was a lot of things in this episode that just were not done right. And if this had just been another episode, I might have ranked it a little bit higher because I thought that there was some really cool stuff in it. But I mean, as a season finale, I don't know. I was really let
I could
down
see
by
that.
that. Really let down by that. All right, so David, um, our favorite little Sith Lord comes, all sabers blazing. Objectively trash. If you can't get your main character to stop being wooden, you're fired. If you can't direct a fight scene in an action show, or can't cast a believable supervillain, you're fired.
Well, thank you, Mr. Trump. Um,
Right. I know. It's like, where
I'm
do you
sure that
begin,
I'm
right?
sure that warms his heart, but
Well, all right, let me get to these other ones first. Um, Dwight, I would give the last episode a 7. I would like to see the Balin parts that were taken out. I wasn't aware there were any Balin parts that were taken out. If there were Balin parts that were taken out, I would like to see the Balin parts that were taken out. Because, he was barely in this. Shin was barely in this. Shin's whole, like, ending thing was completely vague and made no sense to me. The Balin thing, it seems like it's set up. Look, now it seems to me, by the way, like they're going to have to recast him. I mean, they have to, because obviously his story is not finished. Voyager seems to be on board with me, at least for the numerical ratings. 5 out of 10 for this episode. There wasn't enough emotional payoff. They didn't explain anything. Overall, series 7.5 out of 10. I love the fight choreography. Love Cetos, the star map, Ahsoka the White's outfit. And you know what? I mean, almost as just like a little window into next week. I would probably go, 7 or 7.5 for the series. Maybe 6. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. But yeah, agreed. David further writes, I saw a clip of cartoon Thrawn from Rebels, and this old grandpa they casted doesn't look threatening at all. He's out of shape, he's fat, he looks old and frail, he's practically a blue Joe Biden. Well, an interesting thing, I don't entirely disagree. They cast him because he is the guy that voices Thrawn in the cartoon. We'll speak David tonight. Normally, I would say animated series, Rebels, but, he calls it a cartoon, we'll call it a cartoon. So, yeah, that's what they were trying to do. They were actually trying to give a little continuity. I'm not, it's like, it's not enough to really, but yeah, I was a little, like, facially and stuff, it looks okay, but yeah, I think that they're, like, a Michael Fassbender, there's some people that I think would have captured Thrawn's look a little bit more, especially considering that, yes, Thrawn is a very formidable warrior. He's very lean, very strong. Excuse me. And yeah, I could see where that would take people out of it. So there is that. Dragonfly says 6 for the episode, 7 for the series. So I don't know, is there anything you want to address out of all that?
No, I mean, like I said, I get everyone's points. It's cool. I definitely get it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt our feelings. We didn't write it.
Yeah,
It's like, I mean, look. Well, that's the other thing that makes this stuff fun. This would be pretty boring if everybody felt the same way. I mean, it'd be,
right.
Who wants to see that? Ronaldo's with us. Ronaldo, you're joining us at the end of the show, man. You're going to have to go back and watch this, but you could still like the video, though. You're here for that. Which, I should point out, of course, the obligatory thing that every YouTuber says, right? Be sure that you like and subscribe and everything. Algorithm likes it, on and on it goes. But we did actually start, like I said, we got a bunch of new subscribers, which is cool. I was really happy to see that. I hope that continues. And we started producing a bunch of little YouTube shorts. So some of them are just clips from these shows, like little bite-sized videos of each of our shows. But every day we've been releasing these new character profiles. So far, you get people like Vader, and I think tomorrow it's going to be Obi-Wan or something. But it's like every day we've been putting out like these 15-second YouTube shorts that give a different character, their strongest attribute, and a brief description about them. So, it's basically going to be something that we hope to continue to release. So, do me a favor. These shorts are only like 15 seconds to a minute long. If you guys want to just pile through some of those, that'd be great. Ronaldo, he's like, oh, man, come on. Well, I'll give my rant in the comments. Well, yeah. I'm interested to see where your thoughts intersect with ours. But, thanks, guys, for watching us tonight. Again, hopefully the symptoms of this cold or whatever virus that I have start to go away a little bit. At least I feel better than I have in the past, few days. So that's good. A little bit more energy from last Monday. Ronaldo does say he gives this episode a 7.9. I had fun, but there's a lot of issues. Yeah, there's a lot of issues. And if you go back and watch this episode in its entirety, you'll basically see all of them. So again, don't forget to join us Monday, where we're going to talk about Peridia and the whole father, the son, the daughter, the whole Balin scene. We're going to go into some of that stuff. That's pretty much what we're doing Monday, right? I just want to make sure that's all right. I don't want to give the wrong information. All right, so we're going to do that. And then, of course, next Friday, it'll be pre-recorded. But we're going to do a whole series retrospective. And depending on how the day goes, because I'm going to be out of town on a job, I might be able to chat in if we keep the same premiere time. If we just premiere it at 11 p.m., which is probably what we'll do. So we do that. There's a chance that both of us could actually be in the chats chatting with you guys, where we're going to do the whole Ahsoka series retrospective. We'll go into some of the high points, the low points, what we thought, so you're going to want to check that out as well. So until Monday, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.